Thank you, Annika, for
Hello.
stopping me so that I could set up to record this. And thank you for for agreeing to like saying yes to my request for interviewer so that I can just it's like I'm my being is growing these new distinctions and I am putting words to them is something that I have been that I want practice in. And especially in the wake of this of a gathering that I went to and some other spaces, even just short relational spaces where this activity of a culture to culture conversation is happening, or this learning to speak from the culture that I've grown in me, that I'm coming from, even when I'm not coming from there, uh, because I have parts. And
Hmm.
maybe I'm coming from a part and I don't notice it yet.
Yeah, you shared here before that we started recording about being an ambassador of archaearchy. You share more about what that means to you.
Yeah. Mm. While I was at a convergence a couple of weeks ago, it was a gathering of edge workers. And it turned out that three or four people in this space, in addition to me, no more like five people, had had been knew what possibility management was and had gone to some kind of training from Expand the Box, Possibility Labs, Rage Clubs, Heart Gym, you know, different spaces. So I didn't get the full like background from each of them, but each of them is, has the distinction they have, and and then there was I with the distinction that I have that existed before I started using and studying possibility management and what's grown in me since. And it was the whole gathering, it was a 4 day gathering, and the whole gathering were this series of culture to culture conversations, sometimes with one other person, sometimes with a small group, sometimes with the whole group. And during these 4 days, Clinton sent me a message that where he sent me the link to this brand new uh, embassies of archaearchy or ambassadors of archaearchy. I can't remember which right now. And he said to me, you are one. And
Mm.
and he said, do you feel it? And I didn't look at the whole website, but I saw it and I was like, wow, yeah, I am one. And I am in the middle of it right now. Like at this gathering, I was like, I am an ambassador of archaearchy in this gathering. And in retrospect, what I can see more clearly is that there were others there who, and it wasn't limited to the people who had exposure to possibility management. There were others there too. If someone had said, pick out the people who are here for archaearchy and who maybe even will become ambassadors of archaearchy one day, maybe not in this lifetime, I don't know, maybe not soon, maybe in a while. Who do you think they are? Like if it was a kind of betting game, like who do you put your vote on, or who do you put your guess on? I I would have very quickly, probably, I think, said that person, that person, that person, that person, that person. And why I'm talking about this is because this is something I can see when I take a bigger look back over my life. I can see that I have this, maybe it's something like a knack to recognize people who are here for something radically different than modern culture. And and some of them I would put their names on a list that was something like, when I have found an Arkin project where they have room for, where they have space holding skill and capacity to bring one of these people in, because they have been so devastated from living in modern culture that they're, even though they're here for archaearchy, they're nowhere near ready to be holding spaces for others. And I would include my eldest son on that list. Mm, the son who spiraled into depression and drug drug use and homelessness, and then tried to kill himself a couple of years ago, and became blind, and he's in institutionalized care right now. So he's like really
Mm.
way back at the start as a child, learning how to navigate the world without being able to see, and also building his inner structure. And I'm I can't help but be skeptical about how it might go for him. But then there are these other people who have been on a path where they've had space holders, trainers recognize them and hold space for them, often in a way that they go into big liquid states, but they come out the other end. They don't let their gremlin take over, at least not for long. And the and so many of these culture to culture spaces that I've been in, it's like there's this balance of chocolate and sword that will work to bring up, like, to be on the edge with a person, to be on my edge with them where they're on their edge, and to hold the space with them in such a way that they don't just bounce out, or they're not like, I'm out of here. And sometimes it happens when the other person has clarity that I don't have, and they open doorways for me and I don't get it. And they're like, okay, this conversation's over. And then I'm in this space and I'm like, what just happened? And
Mm.
then there are other times when I'm holding this space for someone, or I have clarity that the other person doesn't have, and I'm bringing the clarity. And the questions I'm in when that's what's happening are, when am I bringing clarity as being right with this resentment that the other person doesn't already have the clarity,
Mm.
and being right as a kind of vengeance? And when am I rescuing? Like, when is it kind of too much chocolate, uh and it becomes, the gremlin is, like a victim, and I'm uh with them in this not so empowering story of what's going on in reality right now. Yeah, so this is I feel glad to have found words, and kind of, I don't know, painted maybe some things about this territory that I'm in, that I I'm struggling. I'm struggling in it. I'm this isn't elegance is not happening. Grace and I keep kind of lapsing in my integrity. I'm noticing more about what I'm missing and more about what I'm almost that I notice it, but I miss that I'm noticing it. And then there are things that I notice and I don't miss that I notice it, but then I don't do something with it. I
Mm.
don't kind of use it somehow. So there's, yeah, these subtle degrees of dark or shadow and bright purposes and commitments and competing commitments and I'm so glad to have seen a, evidence that I am breaking out of this right, wrong, good, bad kind of territory about gremlin, about shadow purposes, about mm, like much less beating myself up and much less expecting people to not have gremlins or not be using their gremlins unconsciously. And same about their boxes. Yeah, much more able to see this is a box, this is gremlin, this is happening, and not become vengeful about it.
Yeah. Thank you for being a mess and doing it anyway.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and this brings me, I notice my sadness when you say that, and it brings me to this one thing too that I said before the recording, which is I find myself here and now today in this rolling with this flavor of starting over and
Mm.
also of somehow starting alone. And I'm checking it for, is this lone wolf? Or is this really me setting out on to take steps to build the game world that I'm here to build? The arcing game world that I'm here to build, and I don't yet have uh, collaborators, though I do have many potential collaborators, and I have a big team at my back. You know, these whatever 600 and something other possibilitators who are part of the different Telegram groups. Mm. And I don't yet know who's with me about this particular game world. And and yeah, there's also something about how game world builders and village weavers clash, like game world guardians and village weavers clash. Because
Mm.
I had a bunch of really sharp swords to my throat today and in the last few days. And it seemed like the clarity I got was like what you did in my game world is not on. Like that is not, and yet as a as a village weaver, what I thought I was doing was bringing an invitation to the people in their game world, and it was like the guardian was coming in front and saying you can't do it this way here, and I was like, well, I don't think they're trying to say your invitation isn't welcome. I think it was something about how I was bringing it, or well, I'm clear that there were things about how I was bringing it, and I got some possibilities about how else to bring it. And so some of it is about this, I'm an evolutionary village weaver. So intimacy journeying and offers for intimacy, you know, I get that I have a tendency to for my child ego state, my parent ego state, my gremlin ego state to contaminate my offers. And then they come across as advertising or, mm, yeah, just out of place somehow. So, yeah, that kind of completes my description of the territory I find myself in today.
Yeah. Can you share more about the fears about doing it alone? What is the fears
The fears of what?
of doing it alone or creating a new game world by yourself?
Yeah, it's super clear to me that the importance of a team,
Mm,
because I cannot see myself from the outside like
yeah,
anyone can. I mean, I radically rely on other human beings to see me from the outside. I can only see myself from the inside.
yeah.
And and game world building without someone here to say, I'm seeing this, and what about that? And also I also, it's so clear to me that other people have clarity that I just don't have, or at
Mm,
least not to the degree that I have. I might have the clarity maybe in my mental body, or I might even have it in my energetic and emotional bodies, but not in my mental body yet. And having a team, like having one more person, in a way, it's in my experimenting so far, it's great because we can be, if we can be side by side and rolling together, moving forward and being like, okay, I see this. Oh, great. Thank you. And
mm,
and then holding space for each other, especially for emotional healing processes, this can really work. And I would, I want that like live in partner. And I also see how sometimes that becomes, this becomes this, or
mm,
this, and or it can.
yeah.
And so with three people, it kind of pulls it so that there's, instead of this relational space, there's a third person, and it's just adds a whole new dimension of possibility to the space, because now, each two people are seeing the other person, and each person is being seen by two people. So this, I think this, is kind of the geometrical physics behind the magic of the three cell. And I feel scared to be without that. I'm going to shoot myself in the foot. I'm going to I'm going to I'm going to miss a lot. And it's, yeah, I start to, this is amazing. This is really helpful. I notice that the how the slide into responsible victim out of radical responsibility, it's like I just got this picture of me on this path and holding the line in the map of possibility, being with what is, and on either side there's just a slippery slope into low
Mm,
drama. And with one or two other people beside me, it's almost like the line, no, we we can be on each other's team with our swords, and it's the being with part. It's so magical and so empowering. And if I go off the road, someone's right there, be like, oh, you're off the road, before I crash into the ditch.
mhm,
And if I do crash into the ditch, you'd be like, Have you mapped your swamp? Maybe even not by saying it, but by just being there, I am inclined to more quickly remember I can map my swamp. Yeah. So this is it. And then there are these, emotional fears too that I start to kind of accidentally or without wanting to tap into these emotional fears that are something like when like the fear of being turned into like projected on as this crazy outlier who's just, whereas if there are people with me, it seems to somehow guard against that. It's like I show up by myself and people are like, who are you? Where do you come from? Like, who are your people? Like, can we even take you seriously because you're by yourself and you're
Mm.
and if I come with teammates, then well, first of all, the people might not have their impulse might not be to relate to me, but it might be to relate with one or the other teammate. And then when those conversations are happening and we're as a team flowing power to each other, if I can say, oh, this is my teammate in this project, and they're a super expert in what you're talking about, how about you have a conversation with them? And then I'm not trying to be everything to everybody just because, not because I want to be everything to everybody. I get that I can't be, and I've changed my mind about wanting to be, and yet I still have those old patterns still at work. And so it's it's empowering when I can flow power to someone else, for me to get out of my lone wolf patterns and my I have to be everything to everybody because there's so much need and there's so few possibilitators.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that question.
And the next question is, what is your next step?
Yeah, I have so many next steps, and some of them are my next step after this call, my next step tomorrow, my next step this week, my next step this month, and so when I kind of survey all that, the next step, yeah, I mean, the necessity that I have is I notice that my bodies are hungry for in-person training spaces. Also, my wallet has a certain amount of money in it, and my calendar, I have commitments, and so when I put that all together, one of my main next steps is to go to a training in Seattle where Patricio, who is a possibility management trainer, is teaming up with Paul and Annetta, who used to be possibility management trainers and are no longer possibility management trainers, and they still use distinctions, tools, maps, processes from possibility management. And they're so close to here, uh, just down in Seattle, Washington, and they have built huge circle that includes people up here in Canada. And so in a way it's this Venn diagram where I get training spaces, I get initiation spaces, I get all this will feed my bodies in so many ways. And I also meet new people who live closer by, and possibilities for collaboration can emerge out of that. I have no doubt. And then when it comes, so this is my kind of in person next step, big training orientation. And then I also have next steps that have to do with, again, being on my edge and holding space for an offering where I'm training from my edge. And there are a few things that are cooking about that. One is uh, some kind of standalone spaces called a Taste of Rage Club, which are
Mm,
hour and a half to 2 hour calls where it's a very specific kind of slice of the smorgasbord that might be offered at a rage club. You know, 2 or 3 experiments about something specific that anger is useful for, conscious anger is useful for. And an example of that is I held space 3 times for this Taste of Rage Club called Get Your Real Voice Back.
mm,
And it starts with an experiment where each person is just using their voice and noticing where it's coming from, and then and speaking from somewhere else and then somewhere else, using just sounds at first and then words, and just finding out how many more places there are to speak from, and then the qualities of voice that come from each of those origins. And then this question, what is your real voice? And there's a slider. It's like, this seems more real, this seems less real, or this. And then the next experiment is to speak using your real voice as an experiment to one other person and see what you say. And then a couple of minutes of feedback and coaching from the person. Like, this landed as real, authentic. You know, try this or this or this next time you do it. And then the third experiment, or one of the other ways it can go, or an experiment that can be included, is for everyone then to turn to face the world and speak what you have for the world to hear, as different from one other person. And yeah, I want to collaborate with other Rage Club space holders and Rage Club space holder apprentices, delivering more of these kinds of spaces. And then, you know, like for with a Taste of Rage, or with Get Your Real Voice Back, it's like, here, will you try this as an experiment, deliver it maybe to 1 or 3 other people, deliver it to 6 other people, and then replace yourself in as a as a as a person who offering the training. Find someone else who will offer it too, and move on to the next thing. And the next necessity that came up was about the floor process relational space clear out. There were people holding space for each other as basic um, or EHP skill up people. And when I watched the recordings or heard the feedback, I was like, oh my gosh, I want to do a relational space clear out, and I also want to practice coaching and training people to deliver that. And so there was, again, this kind of 3 steps. I want it for myself, there's people in front of me who want it, and then there's this opportunity to learn how to deliver it. So this is the Taste of Rage Club, which is kind of ongoing next steps. And then another bigger one that I think will be a series in collaboration with some other possibility managers who are also doing this work from their own necessity, and also the necessity they see in the people around them, is dismantling resentment work.
mm.
yeah. And this has been, I mentioned it before in regard to, is this me bringing my clarity, or is this me taking revenge on someone for not having more clarity than they have? And yeah, so this kind of, this, in a way, this specialty, dismantling resentment, touches everywhere. It's everywhere I turn. I'm seeing resentment happening. I'm picking up. I'm noticing what's missing in in uh, in regards to people's matrix, and in regards to like cultural spaces. They're often missing that, in a way, that war arises often out of this expectation that someone will do something that comes from an assumption that they know how. And
Yeah.
if they know how, they would do it. And they're not doing it. So it's like this justified, well, we can kill them then. Then I can kill
Mm.
you if you suck that much, or if you don't understand or don't accept me, or don't accept my ways, or where I'm at, or what I want, then killing someone is justified. Whether it, the extremes of physical killing, but also the territory of energetic and emotional killing, like being just shutting people up, shutting people down. And then how to be on the side of it when it's someone who's bringing that kind of, their actions are coming from that. In a way, that's like the next level of training for me, is to stand and to notice this revenge coming at me and not make it wrong or bad, to hold space for it. I just have so much to learn. And yeah, so this is the necessity alive in me that I'm seeing reflected in the world around me and in people around me. And that's not even to mention so many other things that I live with my mother, who's 82, and I also am in several spaces a week with Ingrid, who
Mm.
is coming closer and closer and closer to the day when she will like take off her physical body, or I don't know if that's even the right words for it or the appropriate words for it. And being with her in this process she's in of distinguishing, like, kind of the reality of having a physical body,
Mm.
as her physical body loses capacities, and toward the day when what's happening in the here and now will be this taking off of the body or something.
Mm.
So this is part of another, this is touching in all over the place too, especially the part about having such a small here and now, that I'm not making stories about my physical body, about my mental body, about my emotional body, my energetic body, my archetypal body, my archetypal purpose, and that of whoever is around. And in reality itself, yeah, it's even, when I started getting more distinction about how I put stories on reality and relate to my stories about reality rather than relating directly with reality,
Mm.
I was astounded how many stories were going on in
Yeah.
any given moment. And as I started to learn to drop the stories and be in reality, uh, I suppose I somehow anticipated that there would be less and less stories, and instead there's more and more,
Mm.
and that's a story, which may or may not be accurate to what's happening in my personal reality bubble.
Yes, and I have a story that you notice more stories because you're more aware of the stories than you were before.
Yeah, that that seems accurate. That my scanner for stories picks up more subtle stories than it used to. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, it's a big topic and it's
Yeah.
everywhere. Yeah. I remember you mentioning in some other space about this lone wolf strategy being very strongly connected to this having resentment.
Yeah.
Is that still like a distinction for you?
Yeah. Yeah, especially in regard to, what I was saying about when someone's coming with sword, whether it's
Mm,
conscious or unconscious, and someone is kind of the person upon whom the sword is being used. And it can often then be that, this person who may have been making an assumption that this person could handle the sword, and it had an expectation that they would learn what they're bringing or get what they're bringing, when they kind of have that moment where that expectation isn't met, and then they can very suddenly uh, do a little micro revenge, and this could be conscious or unconscious, and so they would have different consequences whether it was conscious or unconscious. But then this person be like I'm leaving now, you're like, this conversation is over, you're not getting what I'm bringing.
mm,
And so then both become like a lone wolf
mhm,
in a way, consciously or unconsciously. And also this one can, when this is happening, can have had the assumption or expectation of the sword bringer that they would bring more compassion
mm,
alongside their sword, and maybe would feel more fear about what they're creating with this person. And if they bring their sword a lot, this person might, kind of let themselves get hacked until something changes, and then, kind of energetically drag themselves into a isolated space to recover. Or they might say, you know what, I'm never talking to you again, and go off.
mm,
So there's so many ways that these divergences can happen.
mm,
And I'm just talking about two people in a
mhm,
convergence.
yeah,
Whereas if there's, three or five or 50, uh, even when it's a planned timing of the convergence and divergence, like it was in the gathering that I went to. And so it was already part of the agreement that we'd all leave again.
mm,
And yet there can be people leaving with things unsaid, people leaving with things that were said, that some kind of completion didn't happen, all kinds of projections, all kinds of assumptions and expectations were met, were not met, and now all these people are diverging. And are they diverging as lone wolves, or are they just in a divergence and then heading toward the next convergence without it being revenge?
Mm.
Yeah, so this, and I learned very young. I was sent off a lot, sent to my room, sent to the corner, sent outside, sent to somebody else, often with this edge of, you know, get away from me.
Mm.
And then I very soon learned to take myself away faster than they could send me away.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'm the only one. I see it in a lot of people. Like, I mean, the way you just said, yeah, it's like
Mm.
I pick up this, like, oh, me too. I know what what I'm talking about,
Yes.
right?
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
Mm.
So this is where the revenge work and the lone wolf dismantling, unbecoming a lone wolf. And in a way, this is this is expanding the box. I have a lone wolf box. I also think about how, if I'm not running into this wall in my box that says run to people, I might be running into this box that says run away from people, like
Mm.
avoid people. And yeah, so in a way, this lone wolf work is also box expansion, thoughtware upgrade, and everything else that is brought to an expand the box training is somehow part of this unbecoming a lone wolf training. And then the resentment work is a lot like the gremlin work, that possibility management is, so has so many distinctions, has discovered so much about it. And yeah, maybe this is the game world that I'm originating, is another game world that delivers the distinctions, maps, tools, processes that have been discovered in possibility management, just with slightly different, intensities of bright principles. And I thought about this. I did a I did a university course once in astronomy, and one of the things we did was we looked at stars, and we broke down the spectrum of light in that star, and
Mm.
each star has its own spectrum fingerprint, depending on how much of each of the gases are coming off it, and that determines what color it is too. And when I think of this process of um, stellating and becoming a star, jacking into my archetypal body and my archetypal lineage, and then living as a star instead of a planet, and then my bright principles could almost be mapped on this color spectrum. And and I think it takes all the different kinds of stars to make a world, to make this new kind of world that would be contexted in radical responsibility, and that could be called archiarchy. Yeah, and I'm
Yes.
yeah I'm here for that, and I want a team about it. Yeah, so thank you for being on my team, to hold space and ask questions and hear me, and like be a vacuum to bring
Yeah.
what's in here out. And yeah, I don't have a next proposal right now. Do you have any more questions?
No, I have a sense that it's come to an end.
Yeah. And is there anything that you want from this space or about the recording that you want to bring here and now, or maybe that can wait also?
Mm, yeah, you can, yeah, it's yours. So
I
you
would
decide
say
what you
it's also
or
yours because I
yes.
couldn't have created this unless you were here to create it with me. So the way I see it is we created this together. And yeah, my proposal would be, or what I will do with it is I will keep a file. I will send you a
Mm-hmm.
file and you can do whatever you want with it.
Okay.
And I does it work for you for me to do whatever I want with my file, which would be to
Yeah.
share it with my circles, I think.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anything else before we say goodbye?
No,
I don't have
anything
anything
from you.
else either. Apart from, yeah, again, thank you. It's really worked for me to have you hold this space and ask the questions. I think this is an amazing service. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad to be of service for you.
And I look forward to hearing more about the money club that you and Gabriel are going to be holding next.
Yes, we will let you know.
Cool.
And it just came to me like it could be starting at this time or the time of this interview.
Oh, yeah.
So that could like that would work for everyone, or everyone, but a lot of geographical
Yeah,
places.
this is a great start time for many time zones. It's 1 p.m. here in Pacific time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's 10 in the evening for me, but still it's like the night shift has
Yeah.
begun. Like kids are asleep and I'm here in the basement. It's like the magical hour begins.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Yeah. Send me the poster when you have it and I'll send it to my circles.
Right, thank you. Hey, have a good day.
Yeah. Thank you, Annika. Have a great rest of your night.
Thank you.
Goodbye
Okay.
for now.
Bye bye.